back to our regularly scheduled program. But thank you for tuning in. I've tinkered with the lighting settings a little bit. It's weird. OBS preview looks different from what Twitch looks like. I think they do some kind of compression on their server end. We thought the nukes would come in January. Oh, okay. We're waiting for January. But hey, that name's taken. Thank you for the Twitch Prime sub for 24 months, currently on a 21-month streak. That's insane. Thank you so much for your support. And yeah, I just finished my 12 Pro Max review video. Just dropped it this morning. And I'm probably the last. I feel like everybody's reviewed it by now. But I wanted to really, really give a dedicated amount of time to the Pro Max before I reviewed it, and there were a lot of people excuse me, that were dropping the 12 mini review and the 12 Pro Max review at the same time. But I'm like, how can you really get to know them that well? So I wanted to use the 12 mini as my only iPhone for about a week, and then after that I switched to the Max and used that for about a week before I reviewed it. So that's why my opinions and thoughts on it are delayed, but I've loved using it. It's, as the title suggested, the best the iPhone can get. It's a little sad knowing that there's some things that a lot of us were hoping for this year that didn't make the cut, but I really, really love it, and I'm still ever so torn on the 12 mini versus Pro Max, but either way. Let's see. Tesla S&P to be included all in one day, December 21st. Market movement will be huge as $75 billion is required to be bought in that one day. Can't wait. I know, I've been watching the news about that. That should be a very interesting trading day, to say the least. Yeah, completely agree. Let's see. U.S. gets barely any days off in regular holiday. Well, it depends on where you're working. At the business my wife is working at, they didn't give her too much off. She gets a whole week off for Christmas, though. And if you're a teacher, like much of my family is, you get all the days off that the students get off. So they got a whole week off for Thanksgiving, and then they'll get 2 weeks off for Christmas. So that depends on where you work. It's not just U.S. exclusive. Cosminator, thank you for the Twitch Prime for 25 months. Holy crap. Yo, Merry Christmas. Yeah, we're making it to Merry December. Sorry. I read Merry and just assumed Christmas. Yeah, Merry December, everybody. We made it to the end. Can't wait for this month to be over. Then COVID cases drop to 0. All the problems with the world are solved. No more world hunger. Every problem will instantly dissolve off the face of the planet on January 1st, 2021, right? That's how that works. Today's my birthday. Thanks for the content, Drew. Hey, happy birthday, GVA Morning Show. Congrats to you. Hope it's a good one. Let's see. Ricardo I am says, I have the 12 Pro Max since November 13th, but I still watch reviews in hopes that reviewers don't make me regret it. Why do you guys do that? I don't get that. I think there's a lot of people who watch reviews just to validify their own purchase decisions. Why though? But why? I don't know. Do they want like just to feel better about themselves by watching the review? If you bought it and you like it, it doesn't matter what we think. Don't worry about us. You just want excess validation, I guess. Simon Flame says, I'm loving my 12 Pro Max, just wished it had ProMotion. Other than that is everything I needed and everything I need of my iPhone. Yeah, it could have had USB-C, but I charge 100% wirelessly. Either way, battery's great coming from the 10. It is a massive improvement. Yeah, battery life from a 10. Oh my God, yeah, that's a huge improvement for sure. I was a little bit disappointed that I wasn't quite getting the same battery life that my 11 Pro Max had, which is a little bizarre when you're like, okay, I'm spending the same amount of money over a year after I bought my last phone, and now the battery's almost as good, but not quite. I'm like, come on. I don't know. Maybe they just left themselves room for improvement on next year's iPhone. They're like, okay, well, we could make the battery life better because it's not as great as it has been in the past. So, yeah, I'm a little bummed out by that, but it still gets me through the day. Like, a 2-day phone is a little bit of excess. But you know what? $1,100 is a lot to spend on a phone. So you have the right, you have the justification to be very nitpicky when you're spending that kind of money. I think it's easy to forget how expensive Androids have gotten recently, especially Samsung's compared to iPhones. Like, a lot of people were like, well, the S20 series has 120 hertz, but the iPhones don't. It's like, yeah, but only one of the S20 series started at $1,000. S20 Plus is $1,200. That's $100 more than the 12 Pro Max. and I think a very similar display size. Does, excuse me. Doesn't the S20 Plus have like a 6.7-inch display? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, you could do 120 hertz, but you got to pay for it. I remember a lot of people bringing up like, hey, the Note 20 Ultra has a better battery life. It's like, yeah, it's also $200 more. So I guess you get what you pay for a little bit. That's currently, I think, the only phone with an LTPO OLED panel, and it's yeah, started at $1,300. I'm sure now you can probably get the Note 20 Ultra for way cheaper because Samsung resale value is like, you know, through the roof. It looks like Nikola stock right now, but still, that's not what we're comparing to. We're comparing to what they launch at launch time, because obviously I'm sure if we look at aftermarket sales, you'll probably be able to get the 12 Pro Max on sale for much cheaper somewhere else in a few months. But it is an iPhone, so it does hold its resale value a little bit better. But yeah, that's the tech enthusiasts, I guess, don't really see much. It all blends together after 1,000. They don't really see much of a difference. They're like, 1,100, 1,300, 1,400. Who cares? It's all the same. Mike, thank you for the Twitch Prime for 5 months. 5 months and counting. Wow, time has flown by. Keep being classy. I will keep up with my classiness, Mike. You as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Pig Lol 2 with his amazing username donated 10 bits says, my dad has 12 Pro and we got 100 megabits up and down on sub 6. Well, good for you. I've gotten over 100 down on LTE before. I've run a new test with this whole 5G crap. I'm kind of sick of ranting about it, but it keeps coming up and people keep talking about it. Anyway, what I do is I'm going to use LTE all the time because it's better for your battery life, and 5G, at least in my experience, has almost 75% of the time been slower than LTE. So yes, shockingly, I would rather have a better battery with faster speeds. So the only time I will actually activate 5G and go into the settings and switch over is when I'm in a situation when LTE is not working for me. And maybe with that, I can do a 1 year later, having 5G phones, using 5G phones for a year. Here's what I've discovered. So if I run into a situation where LTE is too slow, I will switch 5G on and keep you posted on whether or not it made a difference. But I think we both know what the result of that is going to be. It's going to end with, oh, the reason LTE isn't good enough is because you're in a place where coverage isn't very good. And if you switch to 5G, coverage isn't very good either. So it just results in, if you had sucky internet before, you're going to keep getting sucky internet. Other words, 5G is only helping people that already had adequate internet in the first place. It's just slightly faster for those who already had fast enough. So LTE is 4G. But that's my current experiment, especially when using and testing out the 12 mini. That was, the battery life is not that great, so you don't really want to be utilizing 5G in any circumstance, really. But my biggest point is that for what you do on a phone, LTE is enough, and when LTE is not enough, it's not a bottleneck of the speed in the infrastructure. It's a bottleneck of the coverage, which 5G doesn't solve. So, yeah. Problem is signal, not speeds. Exactly. That's it. In the UK, network 3GF has the 12 and got 600 down and 40 up at my house. My 11 Pro Max on 4G got 150 down and 35 up. See, even that, like, I get it that it's much better, but I feel like on a phone it doesn't make a difference. Like, for what you're doing on a phone, the difference between 150 down and 600 down is not going to be regularly noticed. So, wish Starlink was cheaper. Well, it's beta pricing. We don't know about public pricing, but for your situation, Mike, yes, I agree with you. I think Starlink would be worth it for you guys. I know it's more expensive than what you currently have, but I would still recommend it. A Tesla is a lot more expensive than what I currently have, but you'd probably recommend it. 15 bits again. I'm already excited of 6G. Oh, God. No, thank you. Her speeds were miles better, but honestly, how fast does the browser load comparing 150 to 600? Yeah, see, if it was on a desktop, if we're talking cellular speeds on like a laptop, I could understand the difference because you're doing some kind of more intensive professional level gaming, or you're doing a live stream like this in which having the most amount of upload possible is very useful. But on a phone, that's the only use case I can really imagine for 5G being a big help, is like IRL live streamers. It's like people who need to be on the go live streaming, but that's not a lot of people. I don't think there's a lot of people doing that. Have you watched Truth Be Told on Apple TV Plus? I was skeptical at first, but it's really good. No, I haven't. I haven't seen that one. Truth Be Told, that's the one with what's his name? Is it Aaron Paul? I love him in Breaking Bad, but I haven't seen him in much else. Always recommending Tesla. Yeah. I want 5G Wi-Fi. Yeah, that would be a different thing. If you could just buy like a little router that you could use for Wi-Fi at your house, and that would tap into the 5G networks, that I would be more in favor of. But for just on your phone use, it's not that big a deal. Anyway, if I charge my 12 Pro Max with a 5-watt charger every night, will it help with battery health long term? Yeah, the 5-watt brick is probably the best way to preserve battery health on your 12 Pro Max. Everything else is probably going to heat up the battery a little bit more. So if you're going for all-in, preserve the battery, and you don't care about the charge speed, 5 watts is probably the best way to do it. Pretty sure you can get 5G routers, or you will soon. I'm sure you can. I've seen it talked about, like 5G home internet. I've seen brought up, but it's not. It's really only available to people that are close enough to 5G towers, and people who are close enough to 5G towers probably have access to gigabit internet anyway. Like, I'm not even very close to a 5G tower where I live, and I know from testing on my iPhones that if I switched over to 5G home Wi-Fi, it would be way less than what I can get just through Comcast's coaxial cable that's coming through the wall right now. That's how I'm live streaming, is just through Ethernet. So it's not really helpful to people who don't have access to adequate internet anyway, which is, again, why I get really, really annoyed and fed up with 5G on phones. It's like complaining about a lack of Olive Gardens, whereas something like Starlink is like bringing clean drinking water to communities that don't have access to it. It's like, what if we just worked on bringing internet to people who don't have good internet, instead of work on bringing slightly faster internet to people who already have fast internet? It's kind of unnecessary. It's all marketing. Let's see. I recently upgraded from 200 down, and it was so worth it. Yeah, on desktops and stuff, I get it. Or if you're on a console, like, I don't play many games anymore, but if you are using a PlayStation 5 or the new Xbox and that kind of thing, the kind of digital games you got to download and the size they are, or when there's an update for a major AAA game on a console, oh my God, those downloads are 60, 80 gigs. Some of those games can be in the hundreds of gigabytes of space. So yeah, wanting to make sure you have really, really fast internet on that, a stationary device makes sense, but really, really fast internet on a smartphone that's being used for YouTube and Twitter is just silly. Let's see. What petition do we got to sign to get Sam on the podcast permanently, or is for a crowd? Yeah, I know. Thank you, Ace. A lot of people enjoyed the podcast. I was glad to see, because Nick was on a trip visiting some family long distance, so he was not available. Well, he said he could have done it, but he would just have to have done it from a hotel with crappy internet, and he didn't have all his equipment with him. So basically, there was a lot of room for error. So we just said, you know what, Nick, enjoy the family. Just sit out this week, and I'll talk to someone. We could have just done me and Randy, but Sam and I were texting a lot recently, and he was just like, I love podcasts. I've been thinking about doing one, and I was just like, well, come on ours. We got an opening. So I'm glad we had him on. We had a good talk. It was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. I did not think Sam would be able to free up 2.5 hours worth. And we talked for another hour and a half after the podcast finished recording. We talked for a long, long time about not even tech stuff. It was just life stuff in general. So it was fun to catch up with him. Glad he enjoyed it. It would be fun to have him on permanently, but I don't know if he has that kind of time. And 4 is kind of a crowd. I've done podcasts with 4 people. It does usually usually if you do 4 people on a podcast, one person has to sit out through most of it and can only occasionally tap into conversation, but we'll see. We're actually coming close to a little break in the podcast, I think, because just like last year, we take a few breaks off to just kind of recoup and rebrand so that we can come back with series 5 of the podcast, and we'll give ourselves some time off, give them some time off. More importantly, I'm not going to be taking much time off of work, but Nick and Randy are both trying to wrap up jobs they currently have and that kind of thing. So Nick can sit out of most of it then. JK, in case he sees this. Well, well said, Ace. Have whatever phone you can have if it works fine. Yeah, exactly. There's no right or wrong answer with which phone you should get. It's all comes down to what suits your needs best. But I can have my opinions on recommendations. And one part I left out of the review is I was thinking while editing it, talking about the massive size and the camera not being that substantial of an upgrade with the 12 Pro Max. If anyone was curious, does using the 12 Pro Max make me feel like I was too hard on the 12 Pro? As in the 12 Pro maybe does have a market and I shouldn't say that I wouldn't recommend it to anyone? Nope. Sorry. Didn't change my mind in that sense. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Just because 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max are a little bit harder to recommend doesn't mean 12 Pro should be the one to go for. I've not I haven't changed my opinion on the 12 Pro. In fact, to most people, if most people were asking me what should I get the 12 Pro Max, I'll be like, if you want the big display, yes. I won't be like, you should get the Pro Max because it has the better camera. That's a very, very small advantage in the day-to-day use. I haven't made my decision with the 12 Mini or Max. I'm still very split. I'm still undecided, and I've never been so cut down the middle before on this subject, but I will. In my brain, I have this whole endless cycle of logic as to why I should stick with the Max or stick with the Mini, and my brain fights itself back and forth constantly. But I just decided that whole vicious cycle I have in my brain, undecided on both, I should just document that and put it in a video because it'll probably make people laugh, and it'll probably be kind of funny to see people just sit there watching me go, what about this? But what about this? But what about this? What about this? And I was like, that'll make a good video. So maybe I'll come up with the conclusion in the video. Let's see. Thank you, Mike, for the 26 months of Twitch Prime. Holy cow, that's a long time. How long can we keep this going here? Thank you for the Prime. Okay, 31 Flavors is talking about one of my most favorite subjects. Thoughts on my idea of an iMac Pro redesign. Trash can style cheese grater with integrated Pro Display XDR named the iMac Pro Mini Max. That's ridiculous. The display would be attached like how the Luxo iMac G4 was. It would also have the Apple wheels attached. Well, that sounds silly. Wheels on an iMac? Do people roll that thing around a lot? Well, I'm still excited for an iMac redesign. Memes and jokes aside, I don't need it to be a cheese grater style. I think that if the iMac is going to have Apple Silicon in it, it doesn't need to worry about airflow as much. Mainly because I'm excited for the iMac. You know, for the first time in a while, I've been using the MacBook Air for the past couple weeks, and just today I actually switched back to the iMac Pro. So sorry to kill your happiness. This is being live streamed on the iMac Pro again. MacBook Air is still here. It's not handling the live stream. I didn't edit today's video on it, but the main reason is because I've come to a conclusion on the MacBook Air. I'll review it in the next couple days, maybe tomorrow, depending on the news and what's going around. But I've come to the conclusion here, and we have now surpassed the point of experimenting and testing the MacBook Air, and we have now reached the point of the MacBook Air is just becoming annoying and hard to keep using. Not because of the M1 chip. The M1 chip is great, but mainly just because the I/O is so limiting that I have to keep unplugging and replugging things in. Even with the Quack adapter, even with the dongle, all that stuff, even with all that, it's just very, very inconvenient to have to plug everything in the side, and I have to keep unplugging and unplugging the monitor and the power supply because I use the same charger for my iPad Pro. So when I want to This is a mouthful. When I want to charge the MacBook Air, I have to unplug the iPad Pro. And when I want to charge the iPad Pro, I have to unplug the MacBook Air. But then sometimes I'm exporting something with the MacBook Air and the battery gets shot when you start doing that. So I've tested it. I've reached an opinion. Don't need to keep testing it now because it's just becoming inconvenient. And I'm convinced that, yes, if I needed to, I could run my whole YouTube channel on the MacBook Air, because I did for like over a week. It was probably like a solid week and a half that I was just using this full time for everything, and the iMac Pro was not even being used at all, just sitting in the corner. I did the live streams, I did the podcasts, I did the videos, lots and lots of videos edited on this. And after all that, I was like, okay, it can be done. It's just annoying having to deal with only 2 USB-C ports, and they're both on the same side. That both on the same side thing really throws off my desk. Just the fact that when I want to import footage, or when I want to use this microphone with my computer for live streaming, I have to, the mic is attached to the desk over here through this little metal arm here, and I have to plug in this XLR cable from the microphone. This part. This goes into my Zoom H6 mic right here, and that USB cable has to go all the way over to the MacBook Air and plug into the left side. It can't plug into the right side, and because of that, it's just a big mess, and it's very annoying to try to use everything with 2 USB-C ports. I saw someone comment on my video or on my live stream. They said something like, "No, you should never complain about a lack of ports because you can just use an adapter to get more ports." And I'm like, that only helps you to a certain point. I agree, if you're buying a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, even a 4 USB-C port MacBook Pro, yes, just for the simple fact that we use CFast cards and SD cards, just for that, you should probably have an adapter of some kind that grants you access to legacy ports. And yes, it's nice that only one USB-C port can bring all those ports back, but that doesn't mean you never have to complain about ports on a Mac. You could still need more, especially location-wise, especially if you're in a position like I am where you're constantly plugging in accessories, adapters, microphones, cameras, that kind of thing. Only having 2 is very, very annoying. So if my iMac Pro dies on me right now, or just I wake up tomorrow and it doesn't turn on and it can't work anymore, I would probably get the Mac Mini M1 chip, because that has the most I/O, and I could use the HDMI port to a monitor and still have 2 USB-C ports. And there's a few accessories I have that are still USB-A, so I could plug that into the existing USB-A ports on the Mac Mini. So that would be my M1 Mac of choice exactly right now. But obviously, iMac Pro is still working, and I can still edit with it, so that's why I'm going to keep using it, and I will continue to use it until the redesigned iMacs come out, basically. Anyway, 10 bits for Fables. For a student, would you recommend new iPad Pro with keyboard case or stock MacBook Air M1? Personally, decided to get the MacBook for my girlfriend for Xmas. She better like it. Yeah, the iPad takes, I think it's more fun, but it takes a certain amount of creativity if you're going to be using it for more pro class stuff. I mean, it also depends on what kind of student you are. You know, if you're majoring in something like video production or software engineering, and you're going to need programs like Xcode, or audio engineering, and you're going to use programs like Logic, yeah, in that case, I wouldn't say get the iPad Pro. If you need something that needs, if you need something that needs certain software that's only on desktops, or if you need applications that aren't on the iPad, or if you need just the most amount of storage possible, because to some people that's like the most important thing, is making sure they have space. MacBook's definitely the cheaper way to get all that, but I would say if you're into some type of art degree where you're doing a lot of drawing, or maybe a degree in more mathematics where you're taking a lot of notes, something that requires a pencil or a stylus like you do with the iPad Pro and that 120 hertz display, way better for note taking than a MacBook would be. With statistics classes or calculus classes, trying to take notes on a MacBook would be near impossible, because you basically just have all the numbers, and then you can do slash whatever, but there's usually different charts and stuff the teacher wants you to copy on the board and that kind of thing. So having a device with, for one, a way better webcam, and having a device that you can write and draw out graphs and charts and that kind of thing is way better on the iPad. So student isn't too specific, but I would say if there's not some type of precise software that you need, go with the iPad. I love using my iPad Pro every morning. The display is amazing. It looks a lot more modern, and I love being able to detach it from the keyboard if I want to. Use it in portrait mode. The rear-facing cameras are good. Um, yeah, MacBook Air probably just for the sake that it's newer, and there could be new iPad Pros coming out in March. That's probably a good reason to stick with the MacBook, as it's likely to not get refreshed too quickly. Let's see. Did I miss a donation here? 12345 donated 10 bits. They will skip the iPhone 13 because luck. I guess that's a good reason to skip 13. Luck, right? iPhone 14. There you go. She does chemistry stuff. Interesting. I don't know much about what chemistry classes entail, but my guess is there's a lot of note taking in chemistry. So I would say there's probably, unless there's some type of specific program you need for chemistry class, probably go with the iPad. Chemistry would probably need an iPad Pro, says Kuzith. So there you go. Simon says the iPad Pro was revolutionary for architecture college. Everyone using big paper to draw, and me just there sketching on my iPad, zooming, pinching, etc. Just made me feel so outlandish, but great. No, I agree. I had the original iPad Pro, the very first one. You know what's funny? I was actually in college when they announced the iPad Pro. I was in mass media and society class. I'll never forget this because the teacher kept looking at me. But we were in class, the mass media and society class, and he was going through a presentation on PowerPoint, but the Apple event was going on. So I had it on my phone beneath the desk on my leg. This is a bad thing. Don't do this, by the way. But I had the phone on my lap beneath the desk, and it was playing the Apple event. And while he was taking, and I had I don't think AirPods were out yet. No, they didn't come out till end of 2016. So yeah, I was out of college by then. So I had to sneak. Or no, you know what I remember? I had Bluetooth headphones at the time. They just weren't AirPods because those weren't out yet. But I had a pair of what were they called? I want to say Jaybirds. It was something with a J. I don't think it was Jaybird, but I had Bluetooth headphones, and through my hoodie, I had them in my ears, so you couldn't really see them. But I had the event playing down there, and I watched them unveil the iPad Pro, the 2015 one, and I was like, "Oh my god, a 12.9-inch iPad? That sounds insanely good!" And I remember them coming forward with the price. It starts at $800, and I was like, "Whew, $800? That's insane." So it was really expensive, but once they basically pitched to you that on this iPad you'd be able to edit 4K video, I was all in on it. I was like, oh, sweet. That's probably faster than the 2011 iMac I'm using. So I bought, obviously, you know the end of the story. I bought the 2015 iPad Pro and took it to college. And I bought the Apple Pencil, and I used it to take notes in my business class and my statistics class. Both of which I almost failed, by the way, so I can't really say this is a great useful tool that helped me pass those courses. But the iPad was not the failure there. That was on me. That was because I didn't care about the classes and I wanted to do YouTube. But when I did have to take notes, I found it interesting because in business class, if you had a laptop out and you opened up the display lid and everything, the teacher would be like, please get off your computer. We don't want kids using their computers in class and all that, mainly because the teacher was saying, like, I can't see what you're doing, so I don't want you on YouTube or wasting time on your laptop. But I had my iPad and my Apple Pencil, so I got to keep it in the position of flat on my desk because the first iPad Pro didn't have a camera bump. It was flush on the back. So I left the iPad Pro flush on my desk, and I had the Apple Pencil 1, and I was taking notes. I was still writing like everybody else was, but it didn't look like I had a computer out. It just looked like I was writing just like everybody else. And I remember because the teacher walked by me once and saw that I was doing everything on the iPad, and she didn't know how to handle that. She was like, I could tell because she stopped and started looking at what I was doing because everybody else was taking notes on paper. Everyone was, and I had my little pencil and the iPad. And when I needed more paper, whenever I filled up a page, I just scrolled down and kept writing. And she was just like, She stopped and was like, "Is that what you're using to take notes?" And I was like, "Mm-hmm. Saves the environment." And she was just like, you could tell the teacher wasn't going to be like, "No, I want you to use physical paper because that hurts the environment more." So as soon as I brought up the whole, yeah, it's just a lot easier to not use paper. Can he do that? Yeah, basically. Apple Keynote and picture in picture. I don't think they had picture in picture back then, did they, though? So that wasn't a thing. I think picture in picture came later. When did they introduce that to the iPad? I don't think it was 2015. Maybe I'm wrong. iOS 9. Oh, Pip came with the iPad Pro. Okay, so I did have it then. Yeah, I think I do remember actually, now that you mention it. I think I do remember a couple times using the iPad Pro in class with the notes and then having a little video playing in the bottom. You just couldn't do it with YouTube, so it was kind of hard. It happened with me a lot as well. Eventually, I started a movement and got about 5 people to buy one. There you go. 10 bits for, excuse me, 10 bits from Fables. I don't think you've ever spoken about what your parents think about the whole YouTube thing, and were they a bit funny about it in the beginning? We talk a lot about it if you want. I did an interview with my dad on the Taylosive Talks podcast. So you can look that up, I think, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's the latest episode. We talk a lot about my upbringing and what my parents thought of YouTube. They were skeptical about it at first, which rightfully so. I don't blame them for being skeptical because they didn't really know anybody in all their years of teaching and all their years of, I'm the youngest in my family. They both, they raised 2 very successful daughters before me. Emily's 3 years older than me. Abby's 6 years older than me. And they both went to college for 4 years and got degrees. And obviously my mom and dad both went to college, but right after high school, I was like, I'm not really feeling this. I don't really want to do this. I want to work and pursue YouTube. Wasn't one or the other. It wasn't just pursue YouTube because at the time I got out of high school, YouTube was not doing well enough. I couldn't live off of that pay. It wasn't very much at first, but I still wanted to work, which they were pretty set on. They were like, well, we don't want you to just do nothing but YouTube until YouTube works out. We want you to be doing something. And I had worked for a few summers at a Mandarin ranch before, so I knew that they always needed help at that ranch. So I said, I'll just work at the ranch full time and then do YouTube on the side. And they said, you can do that for a year, and if YouTube is not going anywhere in the first year, then better find something else. And what we had in line was lineman college. So we talked about this, I think, on the latest tech podcast too. Basically, they said after a year, you can enroll in the lineman's college and pursue that if you want. But they didn't really want me to just do YouTube as a hobby and not work, or even work full time and do YouTube as a hobby because I was still living at home. I was making a decent amount at the Mandarin Ranch, but not a crazy amount because I think it was below minimum wage. Not that I really cared because I knew the people that I was working for pretty well. But I was friends with them. We were like family friends. So that they always had work going on there because I think they had a really high turnover rate. Just people that would come in and leave and come in and leave. Not because they didn't like it, just because it wasn't a very, it's not exactly the most fun job in the world. And there's other more established fast food restaurants and that kind of thing that people also like to work for. So it's a lot of manual labor. It's very exhausting work, but it wasn't too far away from me, so it was easy to work at. And I did that for a year, and thankfully YouTube did take off. And once my parents saw that I could live off of it and do YouTube full time, they were, for one, extremely impressed and confused. They were very, at first they were like, really? You can do that? And then afterwards they were very supportive and very, very vocally proud to talk about me. And it was kind of awkward at first because if you're at like a restaurant or something and my parents know everybody in their hometown, so that whenever we would run into someone, they'd be like, so, Emily's at school and Abby's out of school and out of college, and what's Drew doing these days? And they'd be like, well, he's doing YouTube. they'd be like, "Oh, okay," because that kind of that kind of has this. It's almost like saying he started a band, right? It's kind of the equivalent of saying like, he's not doing very much, but he has some hobbies he's interested in. Um, but you also don't want to come across too pushy as like to flex your paycheck at everyone, because it'd be one thing to be like, well, I'm doing YouTube and I make this much money a month off of it, but you almost feel like you have to say something like that, because if you don't, people just assume, oh, you're living with your parents and you're not doing anything with your life, and you know he has a gaming channel. This guy plays Minecraft and uploads videos of it, and that's what he's doing with his life. He's a college dropout, and his mom has to do his laundry and all that. It kind of has a stigma if you just say, oh, he's doing YouTube. So there's a certain amount of you could just see it in people's eyes. I'll just say that. A few times there were people that were like, so what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing YouTube full time now. They'd be like, oh, right. Got it. You didn't want to be like, I do YouTube and it's real. It's a super real job. I actually get paid. I get paid a lot. Probably get paid too much. You don't want to come across too overbearing. Drew dropping the AdSense account in the middle of Applebee's. That's right. Just in casual conversation. Hello, I make this much. How much do you make? Yes, I'm still 22, though my birthday is in February, so I'm almost 23. Are you going to do an updated revenue video on Talks, or was that a one-time thing? I don't know. If people want me to do it, I guess. I don't have to. It's not like I wasn't planning on making that a traditional thing. For the longest time, I was skeptical to let anybody know how much I made, because I was kind of worried and concerned about judgment, because I feel like it's a very personal thing. I don't really see that much of a need to keep it private anymore, because I'm just kind of like, you know what, judge if you want, but I'm happy with my life decision, so you can say I did it wrong anyway. But I feel like most people with a decent amount of logic in their head would look at what me and my wife have done financially and been like, yeah, they made the right call. They did the right thing. But the other issue it stems from is when you start telling people how much you make, then everybody starts telling you how to spend it. Or if you say, I don't know if I want to buy that one thing, or I don't know if that's worth the investment, people can say, but you make this much, you can clearly afford it. Or why don't you donate to this cause, because you have clearly enough money to afford it. And I don't like that type of mentality. I don't like blaming people into donating to charities and that kind of thing, because then it's not really genuine. It's no longer like they're donating because they want to. It's donating so they can get annoying people off their back. Like that's what I don't want. But after a certain point, I was just like, you know what? People are probably going to do that anyway. So, and some people think you make way more than you actually do. So sometimes there's some clarity. I saw some people watching my vlog I did. Was it earlier this year? Basically, I did a vlog, not really a vlog, more of a just sit-down video explaining how much I made on YouTube last year. And there were a lot of people saying, oh, I thought it would be a lot more than that. I thought someone with a subscriber count this high or with this many views per video would get more than that. And then you find out, you're like, oh, that's somewhat average or somewhat reasonable. So that actually helps clear a lot of air, because people watch that and they're like, okay, I'm actually kind of surprised you can get by with that, or I'm surprised you can do this for a living and live off of that. Good for you, I guess. But yeah. Mike saying, how dare you not buy a maxed out Mac Pro? Everyone should just buy that if they have more than 100 subscribers, right? To be honest, I was surprised you made a living wage. Good for you. Motivation can't be corrupt. Yeah, well, that's an interesting statement, huh? Motivation can't be corrupt. I would say there's ways you can motivate someone for the wrong reasons. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I could talk about that statement for an hour or something. You are the same age as my son. Whoa, that's kind of trippy. Shout out to Mike's son. You got to invest, son. Here's my idea you could make more money of. There you go. My mom was just as skeptical when I was in SOAR, still made a decent paycheck for a 15-year-old. Yeah, I mean, if you're making a paycheck at all at 15 years old, that's pretty impressive. Because I think most people aren't working at 15. Most people I knew started part-time work when they were 16, but they had to get a worker's permit for it. Don't forget about your obligatory Model X. Exactly. You just have to buy that. Now you're an influencer. Uh, love your YouTube videos. Thank you, Hans. Appreciate that. Older folks probably don't think of it as a real job. I think they don't think of it as a real job, but I think they're just confused by it. Because my old boss at the Mandarin Ranch, he's retired now, so he's not working at the Mandarin Ranch anymore. He moved out of state, actually. I think he moved to Idaho or something. But we got to know each other pretty well because I was kind of his right-hand man at the ranch. So basically, when he was delivering mandarins and fruit to different businesses and school districts, I had to be alongside him, and I had to get all dressed up and wear the hat and everything. And we spent a lot of time in a pickup truck together, basically. And I must have tried to explain to him probably 7 or 10 times what I was doing on YouTube, because he kept telling me, you don't want to do this for the rest of your life. You don't want to be doing Mandarin Ranch work in 30 years. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be doing anything in 30 years. I can't think of any job that would suffice and make me happy for that long, because I've not even been alive 30 years. So how can I know how I'll feel in 30 years? And I kept telling him, yeah, I'm working on this YouTube thing too. Like, I kept telling him, this isn't my only job. I'm also doing YouTube videos. And he was like, how do you make money off of those? Like, I don't understand. Like, he couldn't grasp the idea that people would want to watch me talk about tech. He was like, what are the videos about? And I'd be like, well, they're mostly about like smartphones and iPads and computers, and what computers are yet to come out and how they'll get better in time. And he would just be like, who would watch that though? Like, why would anyone want to watch that? Be like, thanks, boss. Very motivating of you. No, but I kept explaining to him that, people want advice, basically, or people want to know if they should buy something because they don't know if something's about to come out, or they want to know what the next generation is going to have. So they want to know what to look forward to with phones and kind of things. And they were like, so where does the money come from? Who pays you for that? And I say, Google, because there's ads on those videos that advertisers pay for. So the more people watch, the more money you get. And he would just be like, why would they sit through the ads? Like, why would someone want to watch you talk about phones and that kind of? I explained it at least 7 or 10 times, and he never really fully understood it. But he comes from a very different time. He was, I think, late 60s, early 70s in age, and he manned like one of the most straight up normal, like, fundamental basic businesses of all time. It's like a farmer. You grow fruit, you sell the fruit. That's it. That's it's like the most basic logic of business you can possibly have, and that's what he did for like decades. Like, that's what he's used to. Not dissing that business in any way. I'm just saying it's a very long term. It's been around for a long time. It's probably one of the first businesses that ever existed, was selling food, selling a fruit of some kind. And the world of today is, the fact that my job can even exist is hard to wrap your brain around, because it probably couldn't have existed like 2 decades ago. In the year 2000, the idea that someone could work from home making videos about tech products and uploading those videos and getting paid to upload those videos, and they're not employed by someone else, they're not part of a media outlet, they're freelance, they're doing whatever they want, there's no boss, they're just, YouTube's paying you to just talk about tech. So in that sense, yeah, like 2 decades ago, this wouldn't have been possible. The fact that it's only been possible for probably around 10 years, it's been like an actual feasible full-time job. Probably around 2010, I would say, is when like the partner program could let anybody join and sign up and upload videos, and they would reimburse you. It's yeah, it's barely been an even possible job. So I understand why someone from a different time and who spent most of their life with a very, very different business would have a hard time understanding how this could be a business. Like I totally get that. It's confusing. Um, so I didn't blame him for not understanding it, and I'd never blame anyone for being confused or not understanding how it could be a job, because I still can't understand how it could be a job. And I also think it's so new, it's so rare, it's such a new position, it's such a new job that I think the whole framework of YouTube is very, very fragile. And I think it honestly, I genuinely think it could all fall apart with some very simple changes to copyright law or YouTube's policy. They could change very little and my whole job would be gone. So that's why I'm very skeptical of saying it's going to be here forever. Doesn't mean we can't complain. You can complain. People started talking about that as a possibility in about 98. That's when I was born, 98. How much did I run? How much did I earn last year? Just me? Or do you count me and my wife? Because my wife is working full time, making a very her benefits are way better than mine. I'm glad I'm married to her because I get to enjoy some of the perks of her being employed. And also I love her. That's another part. that's the first thing. That's the top priority. Benefits are probably, number 12 or whatever. If your job does ever go, please at least keep up the podcast. Yeah, I think I would. At our current state of income, I could live okay without YouTube. We could lose YouTube and I would probably still be doing this same thing. I would just I would probably stream on Twitch a lot more and probably put a lot more work into the podcast and probably revamp the Patreon a little bit and start doing exclusive content there. But I could still live off of just content creation without YouTube, but it would be difficult. Just me. I'm trying to remember because it's kind of complicated. I know how much just the tech channel made, which is around 66,000. So if we're talking just tech, I mean that's just the YouTube channel. It's not counting the podcast or Patreon or Twitch or the EV channel, which kind of blew up and got popular at the tail end of last year. So it was about 66K with the YouTube channel, but that's pre-tax. I pay probably close to 20 to 25% in income tax to federal and state. So I don't get to keep 66K. The reason when I did the video, I said 66 is that basically all the other money generated from the other YouTube channels or from Twitch or Patreon or the podcast, all of that money basically went straight to taxes. So my take home was pretty close to 66, I guess. If you're talking just me, if we incorporate my wife, obviously it's a bit closer to 100. Not quite 100, but that'd be cool. Brandon and Mason, thank you for the Twitch Prime for 6 months. Hey, Drew, how are you doing? Great. And I'm thankful for all of the Twitch Prime. See, this is what makes those paychecks possible. Thank you. 8 and 5, thank you for the Twitch Prime for 24 months, currently on a 24-month streak. Wow. He hit the 2-year mark. Thank you, Aiden. Appreciate that. Let's see. We all know that most of the money comes from Tailosive Food. That's correct, yes. Tailosive Food is the real bread and butter, no pun intended. Your tax is so low. It's interesting. You think it's low. Some people would say that's really high. Depending on where you are in the world, 25% is pretty high for certain states. Out of all the Apple products you have, which is the most important piece in your opinion? Ooh, the most important piece? That's a tricky one because I could easily just say my favorite, which is the iPad Pro. I mean, if we're just talking my favorite, iPad Pro, but if we're talking most important, I feel like I really only use my iPad Pro on work days, and the rest of the week I use my iPhone. So just having my iPhone, I guess, is probably the most important because I take pictures and videos with that. I use it for directions, and I use it for, web browsing and news research and that kind of thing. So, Yeah, I feel like iPhone's kind of the key to everything. The iPhone's kind of the main staple that the rest of the ecosystem is built around. So, hmm. Yeah, I would say importance wise, like the one I couldn't live without is probably the iPhone. iPad is my favorite, but I could probably get by without it. I could do a lot of the stuff I do on my iPad on my iPhone. It would just be less comfortable. Fables is saying in the UK, if you earn over 100K, you pay 50%. Oh, wow. 12K to 50K is 20% tax. Gotcha. I have not, sorry, Scott, no. I have not decided which phone I'm keeping, but I will do a video breaking down why I can't decide. I'll explain my endless bickering on which why I can't make up my mind in a video. So hopefully you guys can understand a little bit of my brain's confusion when I do that. Not sure when I'll do that. If you could only have one tech product to do everything, what would you use? I would personally use an iPad Pro 11-inch as it's the best device to replace both an iPhone and a computer. Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there. I'm trying to think. I'd be split between the iPhone and the iPad Pro because the iPhone would have the better camera. But iPad Pro would obviously be better with the desktop experience and having a full-size display, and you could still dock it with a keyboard and trackpad and do video editing and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I wonder how much better the camera is on the iPhone compared to the iPad Pro, though. I'm sure it's better. I'm just saying, like, if you were doing YouTube work and you needed a camera that was good, yeah, you could do it with either. I think you could get by with the iPhone or the iPad. If you cared more about the display, then get the iPad. But if you cared more about making sure the video quality was as best as possible, you could probably do it on the iPhone. It would just be a lot harder to edit on the iPhone because, well, doesn't iOS now support keyboard and mouse? Like, can't you use Bluetooth to pair a keyboard and mouse to an iPhone and you'll get the little cursor similar to the iPad Pro cursor? The software probably wouldn't be adapted for it, though. It won't look the same as iPad OS does with the cursor. So, yeah, it would be tricky. Personally, I would go with the iPad just because I enjoy using it more. It would just be like, if I had to switch everything to the iPad, it would basically just be like no phone challenge because I use my iPad for a lot of stuff anyway. People are saying keyboard yes, mouse no, but I've seen some people say that you can pair a mouse with an iPhone as an accessibility feature. It just won't behave the same way as the iPad Pro. Fables donated 10 bits and said NASA has apparently awarded Virgin Galactic a payload contract. Good for them. Hopefully they can make it work. Would you rather use an Android and a Mac or an iPhone and a Windows machine? Probably an Android and a Mac, just because I use Final Cut, and I don't hate Android that much. You know, I still have an Android phone right here. I use it pretty much on all my work days for work-related stuff, whether it be Instagram or Discord or Creator Studio type stuff. Like I don't use this for personal reasons, but Android's not terrible. I don't really hate Android that much. It has a lot of advantages over iOS, but Windows I do hate, and that comes from extended use with Windows. It's not because I haven't used it, it's because I've used Windows a lot over the years, and it has just frustrated me, and for day-to-day workflow stuff, Windows has just driven me mad with driver corruption and the software updates and the lack of optimization with video editing software. Just, I would be probably very, very annoyed if I had to deal with Windows video editing every day. But Android, I could get by with. I wouldn't be happy with it, but I could get by with it. It works, which is more than you can say about Windows. Yeah. There you go. Everyday Dad did it in the "Can you use the iPhone 12's your only editing video?" He had a cursor on iPhone. Yeah, I think it's an accessibility thing. Obviously, most people aren't going to do that, but you can technically do it. I too have used Android and iOS and think of them both equally. Switching to Mac after Windows was amazing, though, way better. Oh, okay. So Yusuf is in agreement with me there. The nice thing about switching to Android and still using Macs is that you could have USB-C on everything. You could use a MacBook Pro and use the same charger to charge your Android. Whereas I don't see many I/O or port advantages of having an iPhone and a Windows machine. I'm sure DaVinci Resolve is great. I'm sure Final Cut is better. that's what it ultimately comes back to. There are Windows editing apps I know, but they're still going to be on Windows, which has been very unreliable for me. So that's why I have my doubts about them. Excuse me while I edit 8K Pro Raw on my 12 Pro. There you go. If I can do everything I need on Android, just less enjoyably. Let's see. Yeah, I think my sister uses DaVinci Resolve. She does freelance video editing for her customers and that kind of stuff. And I think she uses DaVinci, but she's on a Mac, so I don't know. Maybe she just doesn't like Final Cut for whatever. Losing iMessage would be very annoying, I agree. But I've done like month-long switches to Android on my channel, in fact. I think I used the Pixel 3 I used for a month, and I can do it. It's annoying, and it breaks the whole benefit of the ecosystem, but I can do it. Windows constantly F's up. macOS isn't perfect. Catalina was super duper buggy for me, but it was definitely way more stable than Windows was. Windows was the type of thing where, like, I need something that works reliably, that I can just, every day I sit down and turn on the machine and start using it. But Windows, I would like come to work and I would turn on the computer and it would be like, oh, we downloaded 1 billion software updates last night and we need to install them right now. We can't turn on the computer until we install these updates. So it takes like an hour's worth of the little Windows animation, and I'm just sitting there trying to get started at work, but it was like, sorry, we decided to auto update. Or you'd be in the middle of something, you're rendering something, and then there's a pop-up that's like, we have to restart the computer now, and they gray out the cancel button so you can't even stop the update. And I used to be like, okay, I'm not going to use Windows for work anymore, but I'll do it for live streaming. I'll just do it for game streams because PCs are better at gaming. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just buy a PC and use this PC as my gaming live streaming machine. And for the first few weeks, it worked great. And I was like, oh, okay, this is nice. I can play my games on here and I can live stream on here. And I was getting 1080 at 60 live streaming. The gaming performance was great. And I was like, okay, this works. I'm happy with it. Then 2 weeks in, I get a software update and it installed overnight. And I turn on the computer and now the webcam doesn't work because of a driver corruption. There was some corruption with the drivers to now whenever this webcam is plugged in. And anytime you try to activate this webcam, the entire OS just crashes. The whole Windows has to be rebooted and restarted. And I tried the webcam with different computers and it wouldn't work. And so I just had no webcam for a while. And then I think I had to reinstall the OS or something like that. And I finally got the webcam to start working. And then there was another driver corruption where the microphone quality was all messed up, where I was using the same microphone every day for 2 weeks and I had no problems, but then it had a software update and suddenly the microphone makes my voice sound really, really deep and I sound like a monster all of a sudden. This is what the microphone sounds like. There's no setting. This was no OBS thing. This was no filter or anything. There was no option that says like turn off monster voice. It was literally just a microphone driver was corrupted in an overnight software update. And it was to the point that the machine basically became unusable. Even though the first 2 weeks I was using it, it ran great and I didn't have any issues. It's just more driver corruption, more software updates. So we got to roll out this thing that breaks this thing. And it just, I couldn't stand it. So even that I couldn't get to work. Even having a PC just for game streaming, I couldn't make it work out. Yes, I'll get a new iMac if a redesigned one comes out. Unless it's, I want the bigger of the two. So if they come out with a 24-inch iMac that's redesigned, I might get it to review, but I don't know if I'd keep it. But I would probably wait for the larger one. It's rumored to be a 32-inch iMac. I would get that one if I could. I don't think I want a smaller display than this. I'm very comfortable with the 27-inch panel. I would happily go bigger. I have a BenQ monitor that I used with the MacBook Air. It was like a 32-inch screen. And I loved that. I got really comfortable with the 32-inch panel. So if the iMac gets bigger, I would love it, but I don't want to go much smaller than this. This is what I'm comfortable with. Do you ever see the smartphone having the ability to be the only computer for most people? I think it's there. I feel like the smartphone is kind of the only computer for a lot of people. Yeah, sure, some people have laptops and iPads, but I know a lot of people that basically only access a computer when they need to, and they kind of have like a family computer that everybody accesses for certain things, but everything else they just do on their phone. It kind of is at this point, and but yeah, if you're talking about even more so than today, I agree. I think at some point, Apple Silicon and microchips for Apple's computers are just going to get so good that we'll basically have like Samsung DeX for everything, where you just have like different displays you want to use, and the iPhone powers it all. I could see that becoming the future. That almost feels inevitable to a certain extent. Of like, if Apple knows everybody's going to have a phone and everybody's going to have access to one, then how much faster can the 5 nanometer design, and then the 3 nanometer design, and the 1 nanometer design, and then the half a nanometer design, as CPUs and GPUs on the ARM architecture just get better and better and better, eventually it'll be fast enough to just power a whole desktop, and you just dock your phone with a little charger and it just powers the whole thing. Certain smartphones are already doing that. We can't really go past 0.5 nanometer. Never say never. They probably never thought we would hit 5 nanometer. Yeah, A14 is already fast enough to power a desktop. There you go. Let's see. Oh, sorry, we got a donation, I think. 10 bits from Fables. Did you get anything good on Black Friday / Cyber Monday? Nope. Intentionally didn't buy anything just because I don't like buying into the hype and all that. So I got nothing. Although I would buy the MagSafe Duo if it was out. I really, really want that thing. It looks so nice. It would be so nice if I could just watch and phone charge one cable right there, plug in. That would be so nice, but it's not out yet. I think I saw somewhere that it's going to be out like December 21st. There was some Apple authorized reseller that said it was coming on the 21st. At some point, we need to start measuring the stuff in atoms. Yeah, they probably will. Quantum computers will be a game changer. I would say with how quickly tech and how quickly processors have increased in performance and shrunk in size, I feel like it's inevitable that they're going to just increasingly get faster and smaller and more power efficient. Like, Apple's been making their own silicon for how long now? Like, not even 10 years? When was the first Apple Silicon chip? Wasn't that like 2011? Somewhere around there? I know it was on one of the first iPads. Yeah, MagSafe Duo is still not out, Sam. I know. 2010. Was that the first iPad that the A4 was in? Just over 10 years. Yeah, we've barely had Apple Silicon for a decade, and it's already beating like industry-leading processors. So imagine what we're going to have in another 10 years, Like, that's just going to get better and better and better. And I imagine you could even load a copy of macOS onto your iPhone, and it has a copy of iOS as well. So you can use it as a normal iPhone, but then when you want to dock it to a computer, it can run fully fledged macOS because it has the silicon for it. It has the speed for it. It has the architecture. Yusuf says, I really love the concept of Samsung DeX and NextDock. Bring your phone to like a coffee shop, and they'll have laptop unibodies, which just plug your phone in. I don't think they need to be a laptop at that point, but yeah. Just plug your phone into and do your work. Everything stays on your phone, and when you need it, you can connect it to a bigger screen and keyboard and mouse. Yeah, Samsung isn't that far away from doing it. I just don't think the software I trust Samsung as much with. All the companies right now doing the phone that can convert into a desktop thing is all those companies aren't really doing that much desktop or mobile operating systems. So you have Microsoft, who owns Windows, but they're not very present in the mobile sector. And you have Samsung, who just kind of does skins of everything. So what's it called again? The DeX UI, the Samsung operating system. It's cool in concept, but all of the applications you can run on DeX are just kind of phone apps blown up. So it hasn't really been utilized to its full potential because it's not running a pro class operating system. It's not running Windows or Mac OS. I'm sure there's some workaround you probably can get it to, but still, even then, the Snapdragon chips are just not as good as what Apple's capable of. So if Apple wants to do that, if Apple wanted to make their own version of DeX, they could probably do it a lot better because the software would be optimized and you would have access to really, really high class professional applications like Logic and Xcode. And oh my God, you could make apps on an iPhone technically. So I've never understood that. I want my phone to be a phone. Well, if your phone could run Mac apps and power a external display, I would get it. But in its current state, it's just like run phone apps on a desktop, which is a little okay, I guess. If you want a desktop browser and your phone can power it, I don't know. If you're looking to run your iPhone 12 Pro Max hot, just play COD and mirror to your TV and connect a PlayStation controller to it. There you go. It's not that far off. I feel like it's probably inevitable that Apple wants to be doing something like that in time. It also means you'd only need to upgrade one device. That's true. That's very true. You could upgrade your phone and you'd be upgrading your computer at the same time. And you could probably take advantage of the CPU speed on your iPhone processor a lot better. That's why the Ubuntu phone failed. They tried doing that years ago and no one was interested. Well, you need the app support is the problem. Desktops are really only useful if they have pro class applications on them. If it's just a desktop that happens to run, a browser and your messages and your calendar, like that's all they can really do right now. It's not that useful. It's like I can do all that stuff on my phone anyway. What's the point? But I can't run Final Cut and I can't run Logic and I can't run Xcode or do OBS style live streaming on my phone. But if I could, and just basically the iPhone becomes like a little Mac Mini essentially, and you can just plug it into one accessory and it powers the whole monitor. Yeah, that would be a different story. That's why they won't do it, because they don't want people stopping buying Macs. Yeah, I feel like Apple's constantly trying to think what's going to kill them next. Anyway, I got to get going, but I appreciate you guys with all your Twitch Primes and your bits. Very, very grateful, and thank you all for watching, and I will chat with you all later. Stay tuned. Have a great day. Bye-bye.